disturbed, don't I?
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, I'm ready.
And this is 96.1 FM, Pole People's Revolutionary Radio on JV, and you're listening to Free Aslan. Today's show, we have our sister and comrade, Desiree Rojas, is going to be coming on in a minute. President of LCLAA, Sacramento chapter, an internationally renowned frontline labor organizer with over 50 years of experience. And we love our sister Desiree. She'll be on in a minute. Um, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, most people know Desiree. Um, and by the way, I also have my co-host here. Thank you, Karena, for once again co-hosting here on Free Aslan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, Karena Akri Payes. So, and we're here. We got the YouTube going as well for those who want to, see us on YouTube and review the interview or what have you. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the significance of Al Rojas. Now, most of you know that Desiree is Al's daughter. Um, Al Rojas, of course, labor organizer for decades. You know, and we can have a whole show on Al's, many shows on Al. But let me just say that for me, the significance of Al, when I was in the concentration camp, writing this book, Chicano Power and the Struggle for Aslan, one of the critiques we had of the UFW and of Chavez personally, specifically, I should say, is that, we felt that, and this book, by the way, wasn't just a subjective expression of ideas. This book went through peer review. It was scrutinized by, comrades. It took years to write it because, we would debate different issues and different stances and every sentence, every word was scrutinized under peer review. And under peer review, it's not just this is how I feel and this is what I'm going to put out there. You got people saying, wait a minute, where are you getting this fact? How do you come to this conclusion? Why are you saying this? We need footnotes for that. There's a lot of things that go into books that are written under peer review, and it's and it helps to make sure to ensure that the story and the message is as close as it can be to be scientifically correct. And this is how it works, and one of the things when we critique UFW, and I've never really spoken on this before, but I thought that, having Desiree on again, Desiree's been on a lot of times, but, one of the things that we critiqued was that, some of the choices that Chavez made were not correct, and I'll say it, they were not correct. And, some of the things, we could talk about the wet line. There's a lot of criticism to be criticized. Now, without getting into that, that's a whole show in itself. I will say our conclusion was that had Chavez been, more revolutionary, been, a socialist or what have you, if he would have had a more proletarian morality about him, understanding the working class internationally, and if he was on that level of consciousness, we felt that the correct path would have been to build a labor movement on both sides of the false U.S. border. And we said that in the book, and that is in the book. We felt that had he done that, it could have changed things, rather than having contradictions amongst the people here and the people in Mexico, the workers. That he could have built a class collaboration on both sides of this false U.S. border. And that would have strengthened the labor movement and helped to propel the struggle in general, Chicano movement, labor movement, what have you. And we spoke about that, and that's in the book. So coming out of that, once the book is done, and once I began to learn about Al Rojas and what he was doing exactly what we discussed in theory. What we discussed in theory, he was actually doing it on the ground, and he was building those connections. So to me, um, a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, we love Al Rojas or what have you," and that's cool. But for me, that's one of the things that has always stood out, that he did what we, even before I knew who Al Rojas, anything about his history, we were theoretically writing about, this is what Chavez should have done, and it's exactly what Al Rojas did do. So I just wanted to say that. And so let me get to this interview. It's very special. We have here the sister, as I explained, Desiree Rojas, president of LCLAA, and, born and bred in the movement. And we are happy to have her here. She's here in Sacra, Khalifa Aslan. And I just want to welcome you, Desiree, to Free Aslan, sister.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Joey. You're right. I have been on several of your radio programs, and I've enjoyed every one. I feel very relaxed. I feel like we're in a living room having tea, una taza de hierbabuena, and estamos hablando como somos primos, ¿no?
Yes.
But it's always a great pleasure to be on your radio show, and also, I want to thank Karina also for co-hosting, because Karina is quite dynamic, and
yes,
she's amazing,
is.
and
absolutely.
I love the balance, the duality here that you got going, and that was a beautiful introduction of my father. And yes, you are correct. My father, he did a lot of labor organizing work in the United States, but most of his work was actually in Mexico. And he wasn't very good about talking about himself. He talked about himself in a collective amongst workers, because he felt it was never about him. It was about the workers. But the beauty of it all is that I was able to be at my father's side through most of his work in Mexico. And so documenting all of that history in detail, that I have done, and I'm very I just feel very relieved and blessed to have thought to do these kinds of things. And of course, my father and I, we organized together. I mean, of course, he mentored me. He's my father. He was I was at his side. But we worked very well together, and we collaborated together, and we strategized together. And he trained me to be the organizer I am today. And so I really have to give him all the love and the respect and the honor. And of course, I miss him terribly. And we were very close. My father loved me very much, and I loved him. I adored him, and we were very, very close. And so, the work he did in Mexico was very, very. He was like 30 years ahead of his time politically, and there was a time when, it's no secret, Cesar and my father had differences, along with Dolores, right? We have respect for Dolores, but we have political differences, and there's a big difference. You see, you can respect people, but you can have political differences. And I've been there when my father and Dolores, are arguing. You
Mm.
know, I've seen that. I've seen my father, tell Caesar to his face that, you're wrong. You're wrong. You know, this wasn't
Mm.
about building a demigod. This was about building a farm workers union where Raza and farm workers were controlling their own narrative, and they were controlling their own e-board, and they were controlling their own union.
Yeah.
That's where the power lies, and that's what Larry Long believed in, and Philip Cruz, and many others.
Right.
Even Gilbert Padilla believed that. But, I don't want to get too sidetracked. This is a very heavy story. And, pero I do, thank you for acknowledging my father and his work. The work that he committed to Mexico is absolutely incredible. And, he organized longer and more constructively, more uh, uh, intensely, strategically than most people ever did.
Right.
And amongst brown labor,
Right.
unless you want to talk about, the history of what happened in Central America. We know all that the movimiento there was strong. It's all brown people.
Right.
It wasn't just my dad. It was hundreds of thousands of other people organizing. Pero de California and through through the labor movement here to go into Mexico and to go internationally to do this, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a very big deal, And at his side, in LCLAA, Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, of course, we don't like the term Latin. That's, but this is a way for us to stay connected labor-wise within the labor movement, and to be able to be an independent organization, to be able to talk about the issues that our Raza and our people and workers all around the world that are most affected. And because over the years we never took corporate money or billionaire money or NGO money, we can stand independently,
Right.
and have our own voice and our own opinion for the most part. And we've demonstrated that through our marches, and and I think that we've done historically an incredible job, an amazing organizing job at doing that over the last 25 years. Before people created labels, phobia labels, before people created terms that identified certain movements, these movements, the brown and black and Asian people movements existed, even before the civil rights movement. Okay, we just call it different labels or different terms in order to connect with, the era or the generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but it's always been there. I was in my little library looking at books that I've had over 40 years. As a teenager, some original copies, books, and we were talking about the same thing that we're talking about today. I have a book from 1972, talking about white privilege, and here we are today, we're really using that term to show the inequality, amongst white communities, white people behavior, classism versus black and brown and poor workers and the working class that are so affected, right? So through LCLAA, we've been able to really communicate and really create this very strong bridge, from the United States into Mexico to collaborate, to learn, to listen, not just walk in, feeling like, we know more than you, but walking in feeling humbled and listen. Because through our listening and documenting, we were able to understand then that maybe we might have been 20 years ahead through labor organizing. But what we found out is that is absolutely not true.
Right.
In fact, we are behind.
Yeah.
Desiree, I'm taking it. Oh, Desiree, I was gonna take a guess here. Is that what you meant by the title of the interview that you said, "Que onda, Raza"? We're talking about the same things we were talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Many of us who've been doing this for a long time, we hear a lot of preaching to the choir.
Right.
And the term que onda, raza, que onda, chicana, chicanos, que onda, gente. This is a term used for a long time to say, hey, where are you? What are you doing? What's going on? Where's the evolution of all of these movements or movement politically, right? And we're in a very, very, a very difficult and very hard time right now. Economically, all over the world, internationally. This is a war, really, of the working class against billionaires. Okay? I'm not talking millionaires, I'm talking billionaires. Because if you looked at real estate in San Jose and saw shacks, at
$1 million.
Valued at $1 million,
mm-hmm.
the person who owns that little shack, even if they could barely buy enough food in the month, you're considered a millionaire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we're talking about billionaires. We're talking about people who don't work; their money works for them.
Right. Exactly.
That's the capitalism.
Right.
That on steroids. That is triggering this huge shift internationally around the world. And how do we know? We know by exchanging and learning and understanding that the same trinational corporations are sticking it to the people on the other side of the planet like they are over here. So the bottom line is that through our marches, we reach people, we tell the truth of what is happening, and we're a very odd chapter. We're a 501c5, and we didn't start utilizing this strength of endorsing candidates until Trump came into the picture. And it's preaching to the choir why, right? We know why. But we recently have been endorsing some candidates who we feel, that there's not a lot of people that want to run locally, but we feel that they're right on the issues that we believe in. And we just recently endorsed Marco Amaral, and that we're very excited for. He's running for the California superintendent against Tony Thurmond. And, if you get on his website, you can see his platform, which is quite amazing. I just saw that he's talking about driving California to be a multilingual society, which makes a lot of sense because there are a lot of people speaking a lot of different languages in California, not just Spanish and, Tagalog, but, when you think about the native people's root languages spoken in California, it's incredible. And these are all very important languages that we should be holding on to and practicing in our educational system. But more so than that, he really understands where the money's going, how it's being spent, and how to direct the money in the areas that it needs to go into, like children with disabilities. We don't talk enough about that. We don't talk enough about, the family diet and families who are actually eating, and how many parents are actually walking into the school saying, can we have a couple extra lunches? Come on, man. This is the 5th largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
And ¿qué está pasando aquí?
Yeah, and Marco is someone who has a proven track record, I think, of advocacy, of very courageous advocacy in these areas. If I may say so, I've been watching him over the last couple of years. I've watched him politically evolve over the last couple of years, and I've been aware of the work that he's done. And he also has a brother who is special needs, I believe. So he's particularly attuned to those issues, having worked in public school administration and classrooms actually for many years.
He's absolutely, you got it all right, Karina. And he's amazing, and everyone should be paying attention. So here's my point. ¿A dónde vamos? Where are we going? We can't jump out of this system so quickly, right? So we have got to start paying attention and really jumping on board on at least 3 key issues in this state. And I'm focusing on California. Look, we know we stand on Aslan. We know that there's a lot of things happening in the country, but a lot of this distraction and diversion, they want us to think nationally so that we don't pay attention to what's happening in our backyard. ¿Me entiendes? And
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is that in California, the 5th largest economy in the world, if we could do it in California, it'll take off like a domino effect across the country for healthcare for all.
Right.
For many things, electing the right people. Marco. We've got Cynthia Rodriguez, who's running up against one of the worst Yolo County DAs in the nation. He's in Yolo County. Created one of the strongest pathways to prison of our young youth. Poor young youth, primarily Latinos, Mexicans, brown, black, the young youth. And the numbers are so high. The San Francisco's ACLU has come out to say there is reason for an investigation for the possibility. You see, you got to use that word possibility of prosecutorial misconduct.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a big deal. But there's these races up and down the state, and so Cynthia wants to create a diversion program that shuts that down and puts money into, mental health, and that's the key. Is using these terms to move money in the right areas where families can actually benefit from it. So, where are we at? We're living in a pandemic. We have farm workers and essential workers out on the front line, keeping this country going, who happen to be black and brown and the poorest of workers, the poorest of workers. They're saying that there's a lot of jobs, but we don't have a lot of people to fill them. That's not true. That is not true. Capitalism is reinventing itself. Billionaires are making more money through this pandemic. That is not true. In the 5th largest economy in the world, if we taxed all the billionaires in California and the Bay Area, and we passed health care for all, which would include a free education in the healthcare business, whether you're an X-ray tech, a nurse, a nurse's assistant, this would be free education. We would have been ahead of the game. But the Democratic Party, of course, we all know that deserves a big fat F. Anthony Rendon froze that legislation, and we don't have health care for all. Pero aquí estamos peleando otra vez for health care for all.
Absolutely.
We have Raza behind health care for all, just in California alone. And we got health care for all. Can you imagine what we could get next? We could probably re-own our own energy in this state. And tell
Absolutely,
PG&E,
sister.
que se vaya la chingada, right?
No, absolutely. But sister, and you make some good points on many different things. And I wanted to ask you, and first, before I go on, you didn't mention Native peoples, the First Nations. And, I did want to, give a shout out. We can't forget not only the kids in the cages, but we can't forget the MMIW as well, murdered and missing Indigenous women. And we just, we always try to keep that on this show and give a mention of, the Native peoples, whether they're in the ICE detention camps or, coming up missing. So, but I just wanted to say that. But I did want to ask you about the marches. You guys organize a lot of marches, and what can we look forward to coming with these marches?
Okay, for primero, the annual Chavez March is on March 26th. We'll be marching out of Southside Park at 10 a.m. In Sacramento. And the primero, the Chavez March is organized by Francisco Garcia, and who's on our e-board, and the Primero de Mayo is organized by Fatima Garcia, who's our secretary of our chapter. Francisco is the vice president, and I'm the president. Both great, incredible organizers. Fatima Garcia is the chair of the Primero de Mayo.
We love Fatima, by the way, here at Free Aslan. Shout out to Fatima, our sister.
Fatima's amazing. So is Francisco, and they're both holding their own committees to organizing these marchas. Primero de Mayo is especially special to me because that means we're marching with the world on that day, and we are going to be talking about the immigration crisis, okay, and the issues and why the Biden administration is not moving. And we've already shut down the federal immigration building. They literally bolted it up with chains to keep us out of the building.
I was there. Yeah, I seen that. They had tanks there. They had military. They had
everybody there. But we're gonna march out of NCIU 2015 out of West Sacramento, go over the Yellow Bridge into the federal building otra vez. We're gonna talk about that. We'll have speakers, and also we are going to also carry the no war. We don't want another war. Our Mother Earth cannot handle any more wars. This is toxic chemicals that are poisoning our Mother Earth. In addition to that, war creates, genocide. It creates, refugee camps, and it dismantles, people's governments. We understand the history of why we are in this situation, right, with Russia and also with Ukraine. We understand the history there, but there has to be another solution. Okay, we don't want a war. Okay, and this is a different discussion. I don't want to get into details about this, but this is very serious.
And Sister Desiree, somebody asked one of our viewers, brother Gilbert Bao, brother. He asked if there's any of events that you're talking about, anything planned for SoCal, for Southern California.
Well, we have an LA chapter in Los Angeles, and we have a San Diego chapter, and they are having their own events there. You can get on their Facebook pages, and you can get details there. But collectively, Primero de Mayo, the International Workers' Day, if there's any time for brown people to come out, como de antes, Chicano Moratorium, Raza Unidos, the farm workers, if there's any moment, this is the moment, Primero de Mayo. And it's because it has to do with labor and workers. And that was the fuel behind the Chicano movement. It was about working, fair wages, housing. It was about equal opportunity, and that's what we were fighting for, and we were fighting to shut down the Vietnam War. Well, you know what? ¿A dónde estamos ahorita? In la misma posición, in the same fucking place. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry for saying the F word, but we're in the same place again. And so we've got to come out. ¿A dónde están? We have to come out and we have to show our right in our state to say, we stand on our land. We are brown people. We are black people. We are Asian people. We are even poor white people. We are the working class, and we need to come out and we need to say no to war, health care for all, and we need to fight for the things that really matter that affect your family. The other thing I want to touch base on real quick is MMIW. I am the vice president of MMIW California. Karina, I want to say thank you for your donation to the Christmas Tribe and all my friends who are listening. We raised enough money to provide little little packages for the children that were affected, where their mom, their parent is no longer here.
Right.
It's absolutely horrifying. And to the women who are out there, if you feel that you are in any kind of danger, please get some help. Call someone. Get some help. To find a way to leave and get some help and get some counseling. We need to talk more about the issues of violence against women. And I'm not just talking about physical violence. All this verbal abuse of violence that I see on social media es una marranada. Es una marranada de mentiras. You know what? Violence against women verbally, whether it's men or women, attacking other women and belittling them and bullying them on social media. You know what? I was there when I heard Comandante Ramona speak in the jungle. And she said, when people begin to bully and attack and verbally and physically, violently abuse other people, especially women, you are no longer a political comrade. You are no longer a political comrade.
Damn it.
You are not political anymore. Eres la misma mierda de este capitalismo, of capitalism that is choking families and abusing women and children.
That's what's up.
Pórtate bien. And this is coming from someone who's been doing this work for a long time. Trust me, there are a lot of people I don't like. I don't hate them. I don't give that energy away. I don't like them. I stay away from them. But you won't find me verbally abusing them. Are you kidding me? I'm a political woman. I'm political. I don't create chaos. And that behavior has to stop. When you're in the movement, it's political. You've got a problem, take it with that person personally. It's time to be an adult. But Karina, I want to thank you very much for your little donation towards the Christmas fund. That was very kind of you.
Sure.
And one other thing that you talked about that I also want to mention is that the situation today is very dire. We're in a pandemic. There are a lot of families hurting out there. Okay, a lot of families. We may have a possible situation with a war. Come on, man. It's time for people to start practicing love and community. And if there's anything that history has taught us over the years of living through wars and living through famines and poverty and horrible situations, is that it's in our nature to come back to our community, to huddle and to take care of each other. Are you looking out for your neighbors?
Right. How are we going to do the mutual aid that we know is going to be a requirement for survival if we're here, in a chisme, and talking about our comrades? So.
Well, ¿tú crees? I mean, come on. We're living in a pandemic and all these things happen and people are worried about that. It tells me that they're not organizing and they're not politically on the front line doing what they should be doing. They have too much time on their hands. The last I checked, there isn't enough people talking and organizing on all of these issues. And the one issue that I really want to bring up that is very, very important and that I'm very upset about, and LCLAA is going to start meeting with West Sacramento, the city of West Sacramento, is that a lot of this developing of land of all these large-scale apartment complexes, they go to banks, they get loans, and then they ask the federal government for money. And whenever an entity or corporation or business asks for federal money, that means most of the time that there is a goal attached to that money to say you have to perform and you have to demonstrate outreach to the community or that area and communicate in their language to inform, educate, and to pull them in to participate in the process of understanding how they will be impacted whether they're going to build a freeway through their community, a park, a pool, or they're going to build a building. And if they're going to build a building, there's usually an inclusionary housing goal, okay?
Right.
But what's happening, los cabrones, up and down this state of California, is that the cities and the counties are allowing the builders to bypass the inclusionary housing goal or the set aside amount of apartments that are by plan designated for disadvantaged families. And to my shock, this is happening up and down the state of California. And we've got this huge homeless crisis. So if there's anybody that doesn't have anything to do, and they've got a lot of time on their hands, this is one area you can tackle in your city and in your county to do something for families.
Put them to work,
This seems to be an epidemic in California.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Desiree, one of the other things that I think you wanted to talk about today is on the topic of women organizing internationally.
Women organizing internationally, híjole, man, there are women doing amazing things, incredible things. In Mexico, the feminist movement there, I mean, they are really getting involved in the strategy and in defending labor rights right now. A lot of independent unions are being birthed in Mexico right now. Mexico's going through an incredible transition. They're actually really like 20 years ahead of us. There was a time when we were viewing elections in Mexico to document and to understand this process in comparison to what was happening here in the United States. And when people were voting for parties, we noticed, and through our research, that they didn't have a two-party system. They had a three-party system, but there were a lot of other parties. And here's the key: there was probably about 35, 45 parties on their ballot that they could vote for. But in the United States, we're a two-party system, and there may be a handful. But the point that I'm making is that today they have a new party, a People's Party, and they're in the first phase of making a lot of changes and progress. But they're on the road. They're on the road to creating, in the next 20, 50 years, Mexico is going to be a very strong player.
Yes, well,
very strong.
I mean, right. I mean, if we listen to the Mañaneros of AMLO, I feel like I'm listening to, he's what I hear from him and what I hear from, his nation-to-nation solidarity, with our relatives in Central and South America. It sounds like Bolivarianism on steroids to me, so I'm very excited about that. And there's a reason why the United States has tried to, has already infiltrated money through the U.S. Embassy in Mexico to try to soft coup AMLO. I mean, there's a reason why the Western corporate media hates him, and we see a lot of that. We see a lot of these types of criticisms in Western media, I've noticed, and it's a real a tangible fear, I think, for U.S. empire to have, someone talking about a North American, because Mexico's North America, Central American, and South American economic bloc against U.S. empire. I mean, are you kidding?
Right.
We can't ignore
Here's
that.
something to consider, Karina. I agree with you 100%. Here's something to consider, though. The U.S. is finding that it needs Mexico, not only for a workforce, but it needs Mexico. Climate change is changing everything, okay? It's changing everything. There's a reason why the president of the Driscoll Corporation, correct me if I'm wrong, someone who was in that meeting and I heard it wrong, but it's my opinion that I heard it correctly when he said that they're moving their strawberry industry out of Northern California to Japan, into areas that are warmer. Okay? Climate change. And I asked him, is it due to climate change? And he said, yes.
Right.
Yes. So that's a telling tale, right? But there is a huge shift happening right now. Okay, and women internationally are really rising up and organizing in communities and through the labor, whether it's organized or unorganized labor. Women are getting down all over the world. In Angola, France, Mexico, Puerto
India.
Rico, India.
India.
The women were behind, largely behind. They were largely behind that farm worker, that farm worker situation.
Exactly.
Women, mujeres. Look at what happened in South Korea. Look at the huge, huge, huge strike that they had.
Right.
Women, a lot of women were behind that. And so what I'm saying is that women are very key and not only instrumental, but they are the huge force of our future, because I don't want to hurt men's feelings out there too much, but this is the reality of it. Men have fucked up royally, okay? And women are taking a lot of that control back, and they're doing it. They're doing it through labor, whether it's organized or unorganized labor. But they're birthing workers' unions all over the world.
And
Okay, and
yeah,
that's very key.
absolutely. And women have always been the backbone of any movement or revolution around the world as well. But you did speak about war, Desiree, and I wanted to ask you, because speaking of women again, here in the U.S., the numbers tell us that the highest recruits, we're against war here in at Free Aslan, imperialist war. We're against that. We're against exploitation. Around the world from U.S. imperialism. But the numbers tell us that the U.S. military, the highest recruits today, are Raza, and out of the Raza, and this is the arm of the U.S. military, that it's soldiers, and so it can't carry out wars. That out of the Raza, as you said, women are at the forefront everywhere, and in this case, it's not a good thing. Women are at the forefront of being recruits into the U.S. military. Out of the Raza, the highest recruits are women, Raza, and it's not a surprise that women are at the forefront. Our women are strong guerreras. However, when it comes to the U.S. military, there is a possibility of manipulation of our guerras as well. And so I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on, because you talked about war, you're against war, we're against war, imperialist war and land grabs and exploitation. But when we look about, just like you said, from yesteryear, we're repeating the same cycle. And we are, and our people, in 1972 or what have you, dying at a higher rate per capita than any other nationality, Chicano people. And today, Chicano people are being, shuffled through this meat grinder called the U.S. military at higher rates than anybody else. Not only that, but it's also Chicanas, Raza women, who are the highest recruits today amongst the U.S. military. What are your thoughts on this? Being against war, being against imperialist war, and knowing that our raza and guerreras are being shuffled into this U.S. military. What are your thoughts on this? On how to overcome something like this?
Well, I first want to say that, number one, I'm against recruiters at high schools.
Yeah,
I 100% I'm against it.
absolutely.
And second of all, the fundamental reason, other than patriotism, right, to join the military, but it's poverty. Okay,
Yes.
it's poverty. It is a failed system that prevents youth from entering colleges, universities, getting jobs. look at it. What we need to find out is exactly where, and I don't think we need a rocket scientist to tell us if it's a majority of like of Latinas, mujeres, brown women that are enrolling in the military.
Mhm.
It's obvious. It's New Mexico, Texas, California,
Aslan, absolutely.
in Aslan, right? So, it doesn't take a rocket science. Look, it's poverty. It's often the eldest daughter trying to create a pathway for her family.
Yeah.
We know the reasons.
And it's also,
The
oh, sorry, I'm just going to mention that I think it's also like conditioning they get in public schools. They are constantly being
Absolutely.
routed into educational academic tracks where their options after graduation are defined for them. They are told you would be suitable for some kind of trade, take shop class, or something like that. They do that. I mean, I can speak for myself. After I had received acceptance letters at universities, my school principal had a one-to-one talk with me, tried to convince me not to go because she told me I would fail. So aside from the social conditioning, in high schools you know um, instructors, you have school faculties kind of targeting our youth into what kind of options are available for them, and then also the U.S. military recruitment projection is there's data that is released on their annual reports, and they have already disclosed that the highest recruit, so in other words, the body count they want to see coming in, the manpower, is disproportionately Raza. And so they literally depend on our bodies to continue this war machine.
Mm.
Absolutely, and the unfortunate thing about it is that often, often when the youth get in there, they realize this is not for me. This is not what I thought. This is not what I want, and they go through the program and they come back just as confused,
Yeah.
distraught. Where do I go? What do I do?
Right.
Traumatized. And I want to talk about Vanessa Guillen.
Sure.
After that case, it's a no-brainer. There's no way in hell. If one of my nieces came up to me, I'd say, "Mira, mija, siéntate. We need to talk." And by the way, it was LCLAA and MMIW California who protested outside of Congressman Garamendi's office with multiple other groups in Yolo County, and we shut the whole block down. Okay, we brought the TP out, we brought the banners out. Sister Walks with Bears was out there.
Yeah, the MMAW TP. Yeah, I remember that.
We went out there, and because he's on the arms committee, we demanded with his office, and we called his Washington office off the hook, and we demanded that he write a letter and get other congressmen to sign the letter, and we demanded an independent investigation. And it was 3 days later he came out with a letter saying that he's going to do it. He's going to write the letter, which he did. We were grateful about it. But that action and that movement to start that independent investigation came right out of Yolo County and Sacramento County, out of California. And the media didn't catch it. We didn't care. It was about getting it done for Mija and her family. And we didn't care about, sharing it. In fact, this is the first time I've ever talked about it. But that came out of California. And it was brown people here in California that pushed that to make that happen. And of course, like I said, the news didn't catch it. We didn't make a big deal about it, and we didn't come out saying this is what we did. I'm mentioning it now because we were very upset about what happened to her, because it wasn't just her, it was other people, but it's around other bases there's a lot of abuse.
Yes.
And so, this should not be the way out for our youth, our children, to be a part of the billionaire corporate wars, to clean up their mess, and for them to be used and abused, and possibly die, to get their oil out, or for them to benefit off of the resources that's taken out of another country. They're not sending their sons and daughters. I can guarantee you that right now.
Never.
Yeah.
Their sons and daughters are in very private schools, Stanford, Harvard, and Yale, Brown University. Their children aren't going in the military. I can guarantee you that right now. Most Congress, many representatives in Washington, D.C. don't even have a U.S. passport.
Wow.
¿Tú
Unbelievable.
crees?
Yeah. I mean, this, the state has done so many things that have been just, horrendous in history that nothing surprises us no more here at Free Islam. But sister, we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to ask you, is there anything else, any website or email or anywhere where if somebody wants to, collaborate and get involved or learn about when the next march is or what's going on, is there any kind of contact information of LCLAA or anything else that you want to give out to the listeners?
Yes, please, everyone. You can find our chapter, Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, Sacramento chapter, on Facebook. And if you live in Los Angeles, you can contact the LA chapter there, or in San Diego's chapter. But if you're in our region, please join us, come out and march with us, and be there with us. We've been doing this for a long time, and like I said, we've always focused on the issues. We've always focused on carrying the message forward and how to organize in the near future on all these issues, whether it's healthcare for all, whether it's jobs, protecting workers, anti-war, and especially on the immigration. I want to be real clear on this. The private prison industry, these are concentration camps. They have Africanos, Mexicanos, Chinese. They have people from all over the world, and these are private prisons driven by federal contracts. There's not the ICE prisons are actually a smaller percentage of these type of prisons. They're there, but the majority of these prisons that are being fueled by taxpayer dollars is 100% private prison, and most of them GEO and Civicorp corporations. And those are the prisons that we need to focus on shutting them down. And here's another thing. Here's some homework for everyone out there. If any of your representatives have taken GEO or Civicorp money, it's time for you to run your tia or your primo, or you run for office against that person and get them out. Anybody who's taking that money is no different than someone who is complicit with a Nazi. Okay, it's the same thing, the same damn thing. There's nothing different about it. It's Nazi behavior, it's fascist behavior, and you know what? It's time to start running against them. For that alone, it should be demanded that they step down in office. That's the way I feel about it.
And Sister Desiree, I just wanted to say we have about 3 minutes left. I wanted to see if I really wanted to read your land acknowledgement, and maybe next time you could read it. I would love for you to read it. Your land acknowledgement. That
you read it. I want you to read it.
I will read it. I'll have to read it next time because I was a little unprepared this time. But Um, but I really want to hear you read it and hear you voice that, because it's a beautiful. For some of you that don't know, her land acknowledgement that she wrote, many native peoples and nations are in agreements with it, and it does acknowledge Aslan. As you know, we are on Chicano territory as well. We share land with our native relatives, with our sisters and brothers, and we are indigenous peoples. And many native peoples acknowledge this and respect it. And the sister did present it to native elders of different nations. So I'd really love that, Sister Desiree, and guaranteed. I'll have it for next show, and I will read it. And I'm going to get in the habit of reading it more often, because people have to learn about that. Many have misconceptions, and many bring their own personal toxicity into the situation, where they feel like there's some contradiction going on, but no, there's not. And many native peoples love the Aslan land recognition, and I love that you created it, sister. And I will read it for some years to come here on Free Aslan. And thank you, sister, for creating such a special document for the Chicano people. I really,
Well,
really love that.
you're welcome. Mi mamá es Chicana, yo soy Chicana, and we come from about 5 tribes on this side of the border, y más del lado de Mexico, but we all know the border fell on us. But remember that the Hutu Aztecan language covers an enormous territory.
Yes.
Okay, and that language is spoken to this day. That root language is spoken in Mexico to this day. And Aslan, I want to be clear on this. Aslan is a very, very old word. We don't even know how old it is. And it came. It has different meanings. Tied to water, tied to land, tied to ceremonial and harvesting migrations. It has that word is very heavy, and we can get into that another day.
Absolutely.
Pero sí, estamos standing on Aslan. Yo soy Chicana. I come from Zacatecan, Apache, Poake, and Chichimeca tribes. And you know what? We're all related.
Yes, yes, we are, sister. And we've run out of time now, sister. But I just want to thank you for these words, for your wisdom, for your glecha, and your everything that you have brought us today to Free Aslan and shared with us. And you are somebody that we love here at Free Aslan and stand by you 200%. So with that being said.
Gracias.
Yeah, absolutely, sister.
You.
Thank you for coming on
to both of you.
Well, thank you, sister, and we'll have you on again. And with that being said, Omateo, sister Desiree Rojas.
Omateo. Saludos.
Saludos a todos. Free Aslan.